He'd known it was coming, ever since that slip at dinner last week, when his sister had asked about his type, and he'd let the truth flicker in his eyes a second too long. Robert Harlan, patriarch of their modest ranch-style home in the outskirts of Portland, Oregon, didn't tolerate flickers. He tolerated debts from the mill where he worked, he tolerated the bottle that numbed his shifts, but he did not tolerate sons who loved the wrong way. Anthony had braced for anger, maybe even a fist like the ones that had bruised his arms in quieter teenage rebellions. What he hadn't braced for was the emptiness, the way Robert's eyes had gone dead, like flipping a switch on a faulty lamp. Now, under the relentless Pacific Northwest drizzle, Anthony trudged toward the bus stop on Highway 26, the neon glow of a distant Shell station his only beacon. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Once, twice, a third time from his mother, who hadn't said a word during the eviction, her silence a deeper cut than any blade. He ignored it. What could she say that wouldn't taste like betrayal? The bus wheezed to a halt, doors hissing open like a sigh of reluctant mercy. Anthony boarded, dripping water onto the grimy floor, and sank into a seat by the window. The city lights blurred past, Portland's bridges arching like veins over the Willamette River, carrying secrets heavier than freight. By the time he reached downtown, the night had deepened, the kind of urban velvet that muffled screams but amplified solitude. Anthony had $147 in his wallet, a half-pack of cigarettes, and a vague plan. Crash at his friend Mia's place in the Pearl District until he figured out the rest. Mia had been his anchor since high school, the one who'd caught him staring at the quarterback during gym class and whispered, "It's okay, Aunt. You're not broken." She'd get it. She always did. But as the bus lurched to his stop, doubt gnawed at him. What if even she saw him differently now, a refugee from his own blood? The streets hummed with Friday night energy. College kids spilling from bars, laughter slicing through the mist like silver blades. Anthony pulled his hoodie tighter, the fabric clinging cold to his skin, and navigated the alleys toward Mia's loft. Her building was a converted warehouse, graffiti-tagged brick facade hiding the trendy chaos inside. He buzzed her unit, heart pounding like it hadn't since that first awkward kiss behind the bleachers with a boy whose name he couldn't even remember. Static crackled, then her voice. "Aunt? Jesus, you look like a drowned rat on the intercom. Come up." The elevator ride felt eternal, gears groaning in sympathy. When the doors parted, Mia was there, arms open, her curly black hair tied in a messy bun, wearing oversized overalls splattered with paint from her graphic design gigs. She pulled him into a hug that smelled of lavender and turpentine, and for the first time that night, Anthony let himself break. Not with sobs, but with a shuddering exhale, the kind that hollows you out. "Talk to me," she said, guiding him to the couch, a sagging beast piled with sketch pads and empty takeout boxes. The loft was a mosaic of her life. Posters of indie bands from South by Southwest, a rainbow flag draped over the bookshelf like a quiet declaration. Anthony sank down, the duffel thudding beside him. "Dad found out." The words tasted like ash. "About everything. The Grindr app on my phone. The texts from that guy last month." He didn't yell, just packed my shit and told me to go. Mia's eyes darkened, not with pity, but with the fierce solidarity of someone who'd marched in pride parades while her own family prayed for her soul. "That bastard. After all the times you covered for his benders? God, Aunt, you're better than this. You're staying here as long as you need. We'll figure it out." They talked until the rain tapered to a whisper, Mia brewing chamomile tea that went cold untouched. She shared stories of her own coming-out war, the aunt who'd disowned her, the cousin who'd shown up years later with apologies and a fruit basket. "It gets better," she promised. But Anthony only nodded, the phrase feeling like a distant shore. By midnight, exhaustion claimed him on her pull-out couch, dreams fractured by visions of his father's face, stern lines etched deeper than the Willamette's banks. Morning came gray and unforgiving, Portland waking to the scent of coffee from corner carts and the distant rumble of Mac's trains. Anthony stirred to Mia's clatter in the kitchen, frying eggs with chorizo that sizzled like accusations. "Eat," she commanded, sliding a plate over. Then we're job hunting. You can't mope forever. He managed a smile, the first real one since the door slam. Over breakfast, they scrolled Craigslist on her laptop, Anthony's fingers hovering over barista gigs and warehouse stalker ads. Anything to keep the wolves, Bills mostly, from the door. What about that coffee shop in Nob Hill? Mia suggested. The one with the drag brunch Sundays. Owner's queer as a $3 bill. You'd fit right in. Anthony applied online, attaching a resume that lied about his stability, then stepped out for air. The Pearl District buzzed with joggers and dog walkers, the air crisp with autumn's bite. He lit a cigarette, inhaling deep, watching smoke curl toward the sky like unanswered prayers. That's when he saw the flyer taped to a lamppost. Open mic night at the Velvet Room. Share your truth. One verse at a time. The venue was a dive bar 2 blocks over, known for its poetry slams and cheap whiskey. Anthony had scribbled verses in notebooks since high school, words that danced around the edges of his desires without ever naming them. Maybe tonight, with nothing left to lose, he could let them fly. The Velvet Room was a haze of low lights and lingering perfume, velvet curtains framing a stage scarred by countless confessions. Anthony arrived early, nursing a ginger ale to steady his nerves. The crowd an eclectic swirl. Tattooed artists, buttoned-up lawyers shedding their skins. A cluster of college kids with pronouns pinned to backpacks. He signed up under A. Harlan, heart jackhammering as names were called. When his turn came, the mic felt like an extension of his raw nerves. He unfolded a crumpled page, voice cracking on the first line. In the shadow of evergreens, I learned to hide my light, folding it into fists until my knuckles bled secrets. The room hushed, words tumbling out like rain. About the boy in the pickup truck who taught him touch. The father's hammer strikes on the porch that drowned out sobs. The quiet rebellion of a stolen glance in the Milltown diner. By the end, applause rippled, warm and unexpected. A lifeline in the dim. From the bar, a man approached during intermission. Tall and lean with olive skin and eyes like polished obsidian. Hair cropped close in a fade that spoke of military precision. He extended a hand, calluses rough against Anthony's palm. That was fire. I'm Elias. You just gutted me up there. Anthony flushed, the compliment landing like sunlight after storm. Thanks. Just stuff I've been carrying. Elias nodded, signaling the bartender for 2 whiskeys. I get it. Ex-Marine now slinging lattes at that Nob Hill spot you mentioned earlier. Life's a battlefield, right? But poetry? That's the truce. They talked until last call. Elias's laugh a low rumble that eased the knots in Anthony's chest. He learned Elias was 26, born in Seattle to immigrant parents from Yemen. Discharged honorably but scarred by deployments that left ghosts in his sleep. Came out to my unit last year, Elias said, swirling his glass. Lost a few friends, gained a few. Worth it. As they stepped into the night, the city alive with neon veins, Anthony felt a spark. Tentative, terrifying. Elias walked him back to Mia's, their shoulders brushing in the chill. At the door, a pause heavy with possibility. Text me, Elias asked, pulling out his phone. Anthony did, fingers trembling as he typed his number. That night, back on the couch, sleep came easier, laced with the memory of obsidian eyes. But dawn brought reality. A voicemail from his sister, voice thick with tears. Dad's sorry, Aunt. In his way. Come home. He deleted it, the weight settling heavier. Sorry wasn't a key to unlock the door. It was just another lock. The days blurred into a fragile rhythm. Anthony landed the barista job at Brew Haven, the drag brunch spot Mia had tipped him off about. The owner, a flamboyant queen named Harlow with sequins for days, hired him on the spot after a trial shift where Anthony nailed a perfect pour-over without spilling a drop. Honey, you move like you've got stories in your veins, Harlow drawled. We need that here. Shifts started at 6 a.m., the scent of roasted beans a balm against the ache. Elias became a fixture, sliding into a corner booth most afternoons, sketching in a battered journal while sipping black coffee. Their texts evolved from casual check-ins to late-night confessions. Elias on the sandstorms of Fallujah, Anthony on the suffocating Sundays at church where hymns felt like chains. One evening, after closing, Elias lingered as Anthony wiped down counters. "Wanna grab, foe? There's a spot in Chinatown that stays open late." The rain had cleared, stars pricking the sky like hesitant promises. They walked, shoulders closer now, the city a symphony of distant horns and laughter. Over steaming bowls, chopsticks clinking, Elias reached across the table, thumb brushing Anthony's wrist. "You're brave, you know, standing on that stage. I couldn't do that back then." Anthony's pulse thrummed. Brave or stupid, take your pick. But the touch lingered, electric, pulling him toward uncharted ground. Back at the loft, Mia raised an eyebrow as Anthony slipped in, cheeks flushed. "New friend?" she teased, but her eyes held approval. That weekend, they drove to the Oregon coast, Elias's beat-up Tacoma rattling over Highway 101. Cannon Beach stretched before them, Haystack Rock a sentinel in the surf. They hiked the dunes, sand shifting underfoot, the ocean's roar drowning doubts. At twilight, as waves crashed like applause, Elias kissed him, soft at first, then deepening with the hunger of withheld breaths. Anthony melted into it, hands fisting Elias's shirt, the world narrowing to salt air and steady heartbeat. For the first time, desire didn't feel like a sin. Felt like coming home. But home was a fragile word. Midweek, Robert called. Anthony let it ring, but the message waited. "We need to talk, son, before it's too late." The word son twisted like a knife, reopening wounds. Elias noticed the shadow in his eyes over their next coffee. Family stuff. More like family fallout. Anthony stared into his cup, steam rising like ghosts. "He wants me back. On his terms." Elias's jaw tightened. "Don't let him rewrite you. You're whole as you are." The advice anchored him, but cracks formed. Mia's loft, once sanctuary, grew crowded with unspoken tensions. Her freelance deadlines clashing with Anthony's late shifts, the pull of independence warring with gratitude. Then came the letter, slipped under the door like contraband. From Robert, in his blocky scrawl, "Your mother's sick, cancer. Come see her. We can fix this." Anthony's world tilted. Duty clashed with dread, love with loathing. He showed it to Elias that night over takeout pizza in the truck. "What do I do?" Elias pulled him close. "You go. But you go as you. No masks." The drive back to the outskirts felt like traversing fault lines. The ranch house loomed, porch light flickering like a faulty conscience. Robert opened the door, face gaunt, eyes avoiding Anthony's. "She's upstairs. Weak today." Margaret Harlan lay pale against pillows, chemo's toll etched in hollow cheeks. She reached for his hand, fingers frail. "My boy, I should have spoken up." Tears pricked. "Why didn't you?" "Fear. The same that binds us all." Her voice cracked. "But love, it doesn't bend to fear." They talked in whispers, mending threads frayed by silence. Robert hovered in the doorway, fists clenched, until Margaret's exhaustion sent Anthony away. In the kitchen, father and son faced off, air thick as fog. "You hurt her. Doing this?" Robert muttered. "Me?" Anthony's voice rose, raw. "You threw me out. Like trash." Robert's gaze dropped. "I was wrong. Scared. The mill. The town. They talk." "Not anymore." Anthony straightened. "I'm not hiding." A beat, then Robert's nod, grudging. "Stay for dinner?" Anthony did, the meal awkward but unbroken. Plates clinked, stories surfaced. Childhood fishing trips, forgotten laughs. As he left, Robert clapped his shoulder, grip tentative. "Proud of you in my way." The words lingered, bittersweet. Back in Portland, Elias waited with open arms, their night a tangle of limbs and affirmations. But seeds of doubt sprouted. Elias's ex, a shadowy figure from Seattle texts, mentions casual but pointed. Weeks passed in a haze of normalcy. Shifts at brew, poetry nights where Anthony's words sharpened, Elias's sketches capturing their stolen moments. Mia found her own rhythm, subletting a room to a fellow artist, the loft breathing easier. Then the storm broke. Anthony's phone lit up during a slow afternoon pour. A photo from an unknown number. Him and Elias, kissing on the beach, time-stamped weeks ago. Caption: "Careful who you trust, Portland boy." Heart slamming, he confronted Elias after close. "What's this?" Elias paled, scrolling. "My ex Jamal. He's unstable. Saw us on my Insta story." Flipped. "Unstable how?" Anthony's voice trembled. "Jealous. Stalked me once after discharge. I blocked him everywhere." The lie tasted off. Elias's eyes darted. A tell Anthony now recognized. Digging later, on Mia's laptop, revealed texts. Elias and Jamal, flirty, recent. "Miss you, soldier." From days ago. Betrayal crashed like a wave. Anthony stormed out, rain soaking him anew, the city a blur of betrayal. He crashed at a motel, cheap neon buzzing judgment. Days blurred into silence. Elias's calls went unanswered, pleas turning desperate. It was nothing, a slip. "I love you." But love, Anthony learned, was a house of cards in a gale. The motel room smelled of stale smoke and regret, the kind that seeped into your pores no matter how many times you showered. Anthony lay on the lumpy bed, staring at water stains on the ceiling that mapped out his unraveling like a Rorschach test. It had been 3 days since the photo, since the texts that confirmed Elias's divided heart, and Portland's relentless drizzle outside mirrored the downpour within. He'd called out sick from Brew Haven, Harlow's concerned voicemails stacking up like unpaid bills. "Sugar, life's too short for ghosting your own damn self. Call me." Mia had texted too, sensing the fracture without details. Doors open. No questions. But pride or shame, he couldn't tell which, kept him pinned here, in this anonymous box off Burnside, where the hum of traffic was the only constant companion. He replayed the beach kiss in his mind, Elias's hands warm and sure, the ocean's roar a chorus to their vulnerability. How had it soured so fast? Jamal's shadow had loomed larger than admitted. A grenade Elias had half pulled the pin on. Anthony's phone buzzed again. Robert this time, voice message clipped. "Heard you're in a rough spot. Margaret wants you home. We got space." Home. The word mocked him. That ranch house, with its creaking floorboards and unspoken rules, wasn't a haven. It was a cage he'd barely escaped. Yet Margaret's frailty tugged, a siren's call. He dressed in yesterday's clothes, jeans stiff with dried rain, hoodie zipped to his chin, and checked out, the clerk's indifferent nod a small mercy. The drive back to the outskirts was a gauntlet of memories. The high school where he'd first tasted forbidden glances, the diner where Robert drowned sorrows in black coffee and bile. Anthony pulled into the driveway as dusk bled into night, the porch light casting long shadows like accusing fingers. Robert met him at the door, flannel shirt untucked, face weathered but softer around the edges. "Glad you came," he said, stepping aside. No embrace, but no barrier either. Upstairs, Margaret dozed, her breathing a shallow rhythm. Anthony sat vigil, holding her hand, the fore-drip beeping like a metronome to lost time. When she stirred, eyes fluttering open, a smile ghosted her lips. "My wanderer returns." They talked in fragments, her recipes he'd botched as a kid, the wildflowers she'd pressed in Bibles now yellowed with age. "Your father," she whispered. "He's trying. For me. But for you. That's your fight." Anthony nodded, throat tight. "I don't know if I can forgive him. Or Elias. Anyone. Forgiveness isn't erasure," she said, squeezing his fingers. "It's carrying the weight lighter." Robert joined them later, a tray of soup and crackers in hand, the gesture domestic and disarming. Dinner downstairs was quiet, forks scraping plates, the radio murmuring classic rock from Robert's youth. "Heard about your poetry," Robert ventured, eyes on his bowl. Town paper mentioned the Velvet Room. Sounded real. Anthony paused, spoon midway. "You read that?" "Milbudistalk." "Figured it was you." A shrug, but pride flickered, faint as firefly light. That night, Anthony took the guest room, sheets starched and foreign. Sleep evaded, mind churning. Elias's laugh, Jamal's spite, the Duffel's weight on that first rainy night. Dawn brought resolve. He needed space, not walls, real work, real roots. Back in Portland by noon, he faced Mia first, her loft a whirlwind of canvases in progress. She enveloped him without preamble. Spill, or I'll force-feed you my kale smoothie. Over mugs of her lethal brew, he unloaded. The motel isolation, Margaret's fragility, Elias's duplicity. Mia listened, chin propped on fist, then slid a printout across the table. While you were playing hermit, this came up. Roommate wanted in Eugene. Cheap, close to University of Oregon gigs. Fresh start. Eugene. Smaller than Portland, nestled in the Willamette Valley, with its bike paths and craft breweries, a college town pulse that might drown his echoes. Why not? Anthony said, the decision a leap off a familiar cliff. Packing took an afternoon, Mia helping fold clothes into boxes, her banter a shield. Elias texted me, apologizing like a kicked puppy. You ghost him. Blocked. The word final, a door slamming anew. Elias showed up as they taped the last box. Rain-slicked and desperate. Eyes red-rimmed. Aunt, please. It was stupid. Jamal's toxic. I cut him off for good. Anthony stood in the doorway, arms crossed, the loft's warmth at his back. You say that now, but you kept the door cracked. I can't be your backup plan. Elias stepped closer, voice breaking. You're not. You're everything. Mia cleared her throat pointedly, but Anthony held firm. Goodbye, Elias. The door clicked shut, Elias's plea muffled by wood. Mia exhaled. Proud of you. That took guts. The move to Eugene was a blur of U-Haul rumbles and valley vistas, golden fields rolling under overcast skies. Anthony's new share was a craftsman bungalow off 18th Avenue. Roommate a grad student named Theo, lanky, bespectacled, with a dry wit and a cat named Schrodinger who eyed newcomers suspiciously. Rents due first, drama optional. Theo quipped, handing over keys. Anthony's job hunt landed him at the Annex, a bookstore cafe hybrid downtown, shelves groaning with indie presses and LGBTQ plus lit sections that felt like quiet allies. Owner Lila, a silver-haired lesbian with tattoos of Virginia Woolf quotes, hired him for his soulful gaze. Whatever that meant. Shifts involved steaming oat milk lattes and recommending Audre Lorde to curious undergrads, the rhythm soothing, like verses finding meter. Nights, he biked the Fern Ridge paths, wind whipping confessions from his lungs. Poetry slams at local dives became ritual, his set evolving. Betrayal's ink stains deeper than rain, but I wash it out, line by line. Audiences grew, nods turning to invitations, guest spots at Eugene's Pride events, collabs with spoken-word collectives. Margaret's updates came via text from Robert. Holding steady, asks about your words. The bridge mending plank by plank. One weekend, Anthony drove back, found Robert in the garage, tinkering with an old fishing rod. Wanna try the creek? Robert asked, voice gruff. They did, waders sloshing through shallows, lines casting into lazy currents. Silence companionable at first, then Robert broke it. I was like you once, young, scared, loved a boy in basic training. Buried it when the world said no. Anthony's reel stuttered. You, never said. Shame's a hell of a shovel. Robert reeled in empty. Don't let it bury you. The confession hung, heavy with absolution. Not full forgiveness, but understanding. A crack letting light seep. Back in Eugene, life layered on. Theo introduced him to the local queer scene. Potlucks at the LGBTQ+ center, hikes with a hiking group called Out in the Wild. There, Anthony met Javier, a landscaper with sun-kissed skin and a laugh that echoed like canyon calls. Javier's touch was gentle, no shadows lurking. Their first date a picnic under the Skinner Butte Oaks, sandwiches from a food cart and stories of growing up in California's Central Valley, where family farms hid deeper harvests. But Elias's ghost lingered. A letter arrived, postmarked Seattle. I see now what I lost. Not asking forgiveness, just wishing you light. Anthony burned it in the backyard fire pit, ashes scattering like released sins. Crisis crested unexpectedly. Margaret's chemo faltered. The cancer metastasized. Robert's call came mid-shift, voice cracking over the cafe din. Come now. It's bad. Anthony drove through the night, rain sheeting the windshield like tears. The hospital in Portland was a sterile maze, beeps and whispers amplifying dread. Margaret rallied briefly, holding court from her bed, Anthony and Robert flanking her like sentinels. My boys, she murmured, eyes bright. Promise me. Live true. She slipped away at dawn, the room flooding with quiet gray light. Robert's sob broke first, raw and unfiltered, pulling Anthony into an embrace that smelled of sawdust and sorrow. I failed her. Failed you. No, Anthony whispered, holding tight. We're here now. The funeral was a small affair. Mill workers in ill-fitting suits, neighbors murmuring condolences. Robert spoke, voice steady. She taught us love doesn't divide. It multiplies. Anthony read a poem, words trembling. In the river's bend, we find our way home. After the ranch house echoed empty. Robert offered the spare room permanent-like, but Anthony demurred. I'll visit, but Eugene, it's mine. Driving south, grief a passenger, Anthony felt the weight shift. Not lighter, but shared. Javier waited with soup and silence. Their nights a slow rebuild of trust. Karma's plan unfolded subtly. Months later, a package arrived at the annex. Elias's journal, mailed anonymous from Seattle. Pages chronicled his unraveling. Jamal's manipulations exposed, therapy sessions clawing at codependency. A final entry. Anthony was the mirror I shattered. Hope he finds peace in the pieces. Anthony read it cover to cover, then shelved it in the cafe's free exchange, letting it find another hand. Spring bloomed in the valley, dogwoods unfurling pink promises. Anthony's poetry chapbook sold out at a local reading. Title, Out of the Rain. Robert attended, front row, applause thunderous. In the afterglow, Javier pulled him aside. Proud of you. Ready for more? Anthony smiled, hand in hand. Yeah, all of it. Eugene's spring unfolded like a long-held breath released, cherry blossoms carpeting bike paths in fleeting pink, the air thick with the promise of renewal. Anthony pedaled through it all, basket on his cruiser loaded with manuscripts from the annex, the wind tugging at his flannel shirt like an insistent lover. Javier rode alongside on weekends, their tandem spins along the Mackenzie River a ritual of easy silences and stolen kisses under willow branches. Javier's steadiness was a quiet revelation. No grand gestures, just the reliability of packed lunches and late-night calls checking if the day's weight had settled right. But grief, Anthony learned, was a tide that ebbed without warning. Nights alone in the bungalow, Schrödinger curling against his legs. He traced the empty space where Margaret's laugh used to echo in memory. Robert's texts helped anchor. Photos of the garden she loved, now weeded and blooming under his reluctant care. Miss her green thumb, one read. Anthony replied with a snapshot of his own windowsill herbs, a tentative bridge. Work at the annex deepened his roots. Lila expanded the events calendar, tapping Anthony for a monthly queer lit series. His first curation drew a crowd, 50 souls crammed into the cafe's back room, chairs scraping as they leaned into readings of James Baldwin and Ocean Vuong. Javier manned the espresso bar, winking over foam art that spelled brave in latte curls. After, as stragglers nursed nightcaps, a woman approached. Mid-40s, sharp bob and sharper eyes, introducing herself as Lena from the Portland Review. Your chapbook's got buzz, she said, sliding a card. Ever thought of submitting longer work? We've got a slot for emerging voices. Anthony's pulse quickened, the validation a spark in dry tinder. Yeah, been outlining something. Memoirish. Send it when it's ready. And hey, your dad's here. She nodded toward the door, where Robert hovered, cap in hand, looking every bit the fish out of water. He'd driven down unannounced, a cooler of Margaret's jerky recipe in tow. Heard about the reading. Figured I'd see what all the fuss is. His gruffness masked awe, eyes scanning the rainbow flags and dog-eared paperbacks. They walked the block after, Robert's truck parked crookedly. Those words, about Mom, hit hard. A pause, boots scuffing pavement. You write like she lived fierce. Anthony swallowed the lump. Learned from the best. Over burgers at a dive off Pearl Street, Robert opened up, the beer loosening knots. After you left that first time, I hit the bottle harder. Thought it'd drown the guilt. He traced bottle condensation. Then her diagnosis, like a slap, made me see I was the poison. You're not, Anthony said, the words foreign but true. We're all figuring it. Robert's nod was solemn. Proud son. Really. The drive back to Portland was shared. Anthony shotgun. Radio tuned to oldies that Margaret hummed. They stopped at Multnomah Falls, mist rising like spirits, Robert snapping a photo. Father and son, arms slung casual, grins tentative. Sent to Mia. Healing hikes. Eugene welcomed him back with Javier's embrace. Dinner simmering, Childs Rellenos, family recipe from his abuela. Theo joined, the four of them around the scarred oak table. Laughter bubbling over Theo's tales of quantum physics fails. Schrödinger batted at a napkin chaos contained. But Karma, that sly architect, had blueprints unfolding. Elias resurfaced not in flesh, but echo. A mutual from the Velvet Room posted a clip online. Elias on stage in Seattle, reciting a piece titled, The Boy I Broke. Voice raw, lines carving self-reckoning. I wore your trust like camouflage, fled when the fire got too real. Views climbed, comments a mix of empathy and shade. Anthony watched once, alone, the screen's glow casting shadows. No hate stirred, just pity laced with release. He texted the link to no one, letting it dissolve into ether. Summer heat baked the valley, festivals popping like fireworks. Anthony's submission to Portland Review landed an acceptance. Excerpt from his memoir, Rain-Scarred Verses. Lila threw a launch party at the Annex, fairy lights strung, platters of lavender shortbread. Robert came, Javier's family too. Abuela pinching cheeks, uncles grilling on the patio. Amid the toast clinks, Lena pulled him aside. Full manuscript? We want it. The offer was modest advance, but monumental. Anthony signed, the pen's scratch a vow. Javier celebrated privately, their loft a cocoon of candlelight and slow dances to Coltrane. This is you, he murmured against Anthony's neck. Unfolding. Intimacy deepened, bodies mapping forgiveness. Javier's hands, calloused from earth-turning, traced scars Anthony hadn't known he carried. Emotional ridges from Robert's decree, Elias's fracture. In those moments, love felt earned, not fragile. Fall brought tempests. Robert's mill laid off shifts, economies bite. Anthony drove up, found him in the kitchen, bills fanned like bad cards. Can help, he offered. Advance from the book. Robert waved it off. Pride's all I got left. But, stay a bit. They fished again, then cleared the attic, boxes of Anthony's childhood. Baseball glove, first poem scribbled on mill scrap. One unearthed a letter, yellowed, Margaret to young Anthony, pre-diagnosis. Be your light, my love. The world needs it bright. Tears came unbidden, father and son shoulder to shoulder. She knew, Robert said. Always. Back in Eugene, the memoir took shape, chapters bleeding onto pages. The eviction's chill, Elias's spark and snuff, Margaret's grace. Javier read drafts, edits gentle. Here. Lean into the hope. Crisis loomed in whispers. Theo announced a fellowship in Boston, the bungalow's lease fracturing. Roomy hunt. Anthony joked, but anxiety coiled. Worse. A call from Seattle PD. Elias, in crisis, overdose attempt, Jamal's harassment tipping the scale. Hospitalized, he asked for Anthony via a mutual. Javier squeezed his hand. Go if you need. Closure's a gift. The ferry crossing Puget Sound was steel gray, waves chopping memory. Hospital room sterile, Elias pale under fluorescence, IVs a tangle. You came, he rasped, eyes glassy. Had to see for myself. Anthony sat, distance polite. Jamal. Pressed charges. He's locked up. Elias's laugh weak. Karma's a bitch, huh? Anthony nodded. You deserve better. Therapy. Real friends. Elias gripped the rail. I know. Your words. They saved me in a way. Pushed me to face it. No reconciliation, just release. Anthony left with a nod. The ferry carrying him south. Lighter. Winter gripped, holidays a mosaic. Robert hosted a small Thanksgiving. Anthony, Javier, Mia driving down. Table laden. Turkey, tamales, Margaret's pie recipe. Laughter flowed. Toasts to absent lights. New Year's under Eugene's fireworks. Javier knelt. Not ring, but promise. Build with me. Anthony's yes was a vow, rings later, life now. But karma's final twist waited. Spring, Robert's checkup. Early prostate caught in time. Your mom's luck, he joked over phone. Or that poetry of yours, manifesting. Anthony laughed. Booking tickets for a reading in Portland. Stage lights warm, Robert front row, Javier beside. Words poured. Healing's arc, love's quiet thunder. Applause faded. Robert hugged him on stage. Knew you'd rise. In the afterglow, Anthony knew. Kicked out but never down. Karma's plan? Not revenge but reclamation. The Portland reading afterglow lingered like the faint buzz of good bourbon. The audience's energy a palpable hum as Anthony signed chapbooks in the bookstore's alcove. Javier hovered nearby, stacking unsold copies with a proprietor's precision. His smile a private beacon amid the crowd. Robert lingered too, nursing a seltzer. His presence a quiet victory. The man who'd once barred the door now beaming like a stage dad at curtain call. Mia arrived late, fashionably disheveled, enveloping Anthony in a hug that smelled of patchouli and city grit. Killed it, poet boy. Now, drinks on me. They migrated to a nearby speakeasy, hidden behind a laundromat facade. The air thick with jazz riffs and clinking glasses. Toasts multiplied. To Margaret's memory, to fresh chapters, to the improbable family stitched from fractures. Robert raised his glass last, voice gravelly. To my son, who taught me more than I ever gave. Anthony's throat tightened, the words a balm on old burns. Later, as the night thinned, Robert pulled him aside on the sidewalk, mist curling from manholes. That cancer. Doc says it's beatable. Early catch. A beat. Wanna help me celebrate? Fishing opener next month. The invitation landed soft, a thread pulling tighter. Wouldn't miss it. Driving back to Eugene at dawn, Javier's hand on his thigh, Anthony felt the memoir's weight lift. Edits finalized. Publication set for fall. The annex buzzed with pre-orders, Lila framing the cover art. A rain-streaked window, silhouette gazing out, title embossed in silver. Echoes in the downpour. Spring deepened, valley greens exploding under sun. Anthony's routine solidified. Morning rites in the bungalow sunroom, afternoons slinging books and brews, evenings with Javier. Gardening his plots, dirt under nails, growth tangible. Theo's departure left a quiet echo, but a new roommate filled it. Sage, a non-binary barista with neon hair, and a vinyl collection that spun everything from Billie Holiday to Bad Bunny. No toxicity on my watch, Sage declared over move-in pizza, sealing packs with high fives. Karma's threads wove subtler now. Elias's recovery filtered through mutuals. Sober 6 months, facilitating vet support groups in Seattle. A card arrived at the annex. Simple. Your light echoed. Grateful. E. Anthony tucked it into the journal, no reply needed. Robert's treatments began. Chemo's rhythm syncing with Anthony's visits. The ranch house transformed subtly. Photos of Margaret prominent. A pride sticker on the fridge from Mia's last drop by. One afternoon, post-infusion, Robert shared war stories. Not the mills, but youth's. That basic training love, a stolen weekend in Namera barracks, ended by don't ask orders. He died in country, Robert said, voice low over coffee. Never forgave myself for silence. Anthony listened, the parallel a mirror. You broke the cycle. That's something. Summer festivals called. Eugene's Oregon Country Fair. A whirlwind of bohemian tents and drum circles. Anthony and Javier volunteered at the Queer Ally booth, handing out zines and rainbow pins, sage DJing sets that drew dancers in flowing silks. Laughter came easy, bodies swaying under oaks, the air electric with possibility. But undercurrents stirred. Javier's landscape firm bid on a Portland contract. Big, but relocating him north 2 days a week. Trial run, he assured over dinner, candlelight flickering. We make it work. Anthony nodded, but doubt seeded. Distance's erosion, echoes of Elias's slips. Nights alone, he poured into the memoir's coda, words wrestling commitment's fears. Crisis brewed in heat waves. Robert's scan showed shrinkage, but fatigue felled him. A fall in the garage, wrist snapped. Anthony rushed up, hospital lights harsh. Silly me, Robert grumbled from the gurney. Thought I was tougher. Recovery meant casts and care. Anthony shuttling between cities, Javier's truck bed loaded with groceries. One night, exhausted, Anthony vented to Sage over late-night tea. Feels like I'm splitting. Family, love, work. Sage's eyes, lined with coal, softened. Boundaries, babe. You're the glue, not the whole damn house. Wisdom stuck. Anthony set rhythms. Weekends for Robert, midweeks for Javier's returns. Writing carved sacred. Fall's chill brought launches. The memoir debuted at Powell's City of Books, shelves towering like sentinels. Robert front row, wrist braced, Javier beside, Mia live streaming for absent friends. Anthony read the eviction scene, voice steady. The door didn't just close. It erased the boy who'd knocked from inside for years. Q&A flowed. On queerness in rural pockets, forgiveness's jagged edge. Sales surged, reviews kind, Oregonian calling it a Pacific Northwest elegy for the outcast heart. After party at a rooftop bar, city lights sprawling, Robert cornered him. Book's a hit. Like you. Then, softer, met someone. Widow from the support group. Coffee dates. Anthony grinned, clapping his back. About time, Dad. Javier pulled him to the rail, city hum below. Proud. And that bid? We got it. But I'm turning down the move. You us worth more. Relief flooded. Kiss sealing it under string lights. Winter solstice neared. Holidays hybrid. Anthony hosted. Bungalow strung with evergreens. Tamales from Javier's kin. Robert bringing venison from opener success. Sage mixed eggnog spiked with cinnamon. Mia arriving with a +1. A tattooed chef named Riley, sparks evident. Table groaned, stories overlapping. Robert's fishing yarn, Javier's abuela's ghost pepper mishaps. Toasts circled, to Margaret, to healings, to futures unwritten. But karma's pen lingered. An email pinged New Year's Eve Elias, querying the publisher. Inspired by your work, starting my own. Advice. Anthony replied brief. Write raw, edit kind, publish true. Sent, deleted thread. Snow dusted the valley rare, blanketing paths. Anthony and Javier skied Mackenzie Pass, breaths clouding, falls into powder dissolving fears. At the cabin, fire crackling, Javier traced his jaw. Marry me? For real this time. Rings exchanged simple, silver bands etched with river waves. Yes, Anthony breathed, forever fitting. Spring 2026 bloomed triumphant. Robert's all-clear scan, party at the ranch. Barbecues, neighbors toasting the survivor. Anthony read from the sequel in progress, Javier's hand in his. Karma's plan? Shocking in mercy. From kick-out to embrace, betrayal to bond. A life reclaimed in verses and vows. Yet depth called. Anthony's next project. Anthology of Queer Oregon Voices. Lila co-editing. Submissions poured. Rural confessions, urban anthems. One stood out, Elias's piece. Truce in the Trench. Anthony included it. Note: echoes heal when shared. Launch night, full circle. Portland stage, Robert and Javier flanking. Elias in the crowd. Nod exchanged, distant, but peace. Anthony closed the reading. We kick out shadows to find our light. And sometimes, karma hands us the match. Applause thundered, hearts full. The anthology launch at Powell's thrummed with an energy that felt like collective exhale. The cavernous room packed shoulder to shoulder with readers clutching advance copies. The air humming with murmurs and page turns. Anthony stood at the podium, spine straight under the spotlights. Javier's quiet presence in the front row, a grounding force amid the swirl. Robert sat beside him, his wrist brace shed like old skin, a faint smile playing as he scanned the diverse faces. Queer elders with silver hair and stories etched deep, young activists with pins proclaiming pronouns and protests. Mia hovered near the signing table, Riley at her elbow, their easy flirtation a bright counterpoint to the room's introspective pulse. Elias was there, toward the back, unassuming in a wool coat. His nod across the distance carrying no weight of expectation, just acknowledgement. A truce forged in ink. Anthony had agonized over including his piece, fingers hovering over the delete key during edits. But the words had resonated. Raw trenches of recovery, the shrapnel of lost loves. It fits. Lila had insisted over coffee at the annex. Curating isn't curating if you curate only the safe. Now, as applause crested for the final reader, a trans poet from Bend weaving verses on mountain rebirth, Anthony stepped up. This book isn't mine, he began, voice carrying clear. It's ours. Voices kicked to curbs, betrayed by blood or bedfellows, rising to claim the page. To the contributors, the readers, the ones who held space. Thank you for the match. The Q&A veered intimate. Questions on resilience, on rural closets, on karma's cruel wit. A teen in the third row, voice tentative, asked, "How do you forgive the unforgivable?" Anthony paused, eyes finding Robert's, then Elias's. You don't always. Sometimes you just carry it different. Let it teach without breaking. Post-event, the signing line snaked, hands shaking his with stories of their own downpours. Robert lingered, flipping through the anthology. Your mom's favorite quote, Whitman. Not till the sun excludes you. He trailed off, pride swelling his chest. Javier wrapped an arm around Anthony's waist as the crowd thinned. Masterful. Ready for dinner? Sage booked that farm-to-table spot. Dinner blurred into laughter. Sage recounting a disastrous date with a ukulele player, Mia and Riley tag-teaming roasts, Robert surprisingly game with wine pairings. Elias slipped out unseen, his presence a ghost politely exorcised. Back in Eugene, the bungalow welcomed with quiet, Schrodinger's purr, Javier's slow kiss at the door. You're building empires, he murmured, hands sliding under flannel. Bed followed, bodies a language of affirmation. Dawn finding them tangled in sheets scented with earth and ink. Summer's heat wave pressed, but Anthony's schedule eased into creative flow. The memoir's success birthed invitations. Guest lectures at University of Oregon's Creative Writing Program, workshops at the LGBTQ+ Center. Students gravitated, their prompts pulling confessions. Write the betrayal you survived. Pages filled, shared in circles where tears and claps intertwined. Javier's firm thrived. The Portland bit a boon without uproot. Weekends, they escaped to the coast. Cabin rentals and yachts. Waves crashing as backdrop to bonfires and bare truths. One night, stars pricking velvet sky, Javier confessed his own scar. A high school ex who outed him to family, fracturing ties. Thought I'd never trust again. Then you. Anthony traced constellations on his chest. We mend what we can. Robert's health stabilized, treatments tapering. He dove into community, volunteering at the local food bank, even joining a men's support group for Dads Doing Better. Updates arrived weekly. Planted her roses, blooming fierce. Karma's next curve arrived in autumn leaves. A call from Seattle. Elias, voice steady, pitching a collab. Vet poetry tour, Pacific Northwest stops. Your name carries weight. Anthony mulled, consulting Javier over pie at a diner. Closure or complication? Your call. But growth favors the bold. He agreed, boundaries firm, professional, platonic. The tour kicked off in Portland, shared stage at the Velvet Room, full circles poetry. Elias read first, verses honed. From foxhole fears to open fields, I march alone but unafraid. Anthony followed, weaving anthology excerpts with memoir threads. Crowd electric, aftertalk spilling into bars, stories bridging divides. No slips, just respect. Elias confided post-show, Jamal's trial, he's away years. Freedom tastes like this. Anthony nodded. Keep tasting. Tour legs unfolded. Eugene, Seattle, Olympia. Audiences swelled, vets with dog tags, poets with notebooks, families mending. Robert attended the Eugene stop, front row, whispering to Javier, that boy's light now. Winter brought proposals finalized. Rings sized, venue scouted. A vineyard in the valley, vines heavy with promise. Invites went out. Mia as best woman, sage officiant. Robert walking Anthony down an aisle of wildflowers. But under wedding whirl, shadow stirred. Javier's abuela fell ill, Alzheimer's grip tightening. Flights to Bakersfield, hospital vigils, Anthony at his side. Families pull, Javier said, weary. Like yours. Anthony held him through nights. We weather. Spring wedding dawned perfect. Sun gilding chateau, guests in pastels. Vows exchanged under arbor. In rain and root, I choose you. Robert's toast teared up. To loves that kick us forward. Honeymoon in the Cascades, cabin isolation, hikes to alpine lakes mirroring skies. Re-entry. Life amplified. Anthony's sequel contracted. Javier's firm expanding. Karma's shock. A letter from Elias, post-tour. Found my mirror. Not you, but me. Married a nurse last month. Wishing you're forever bright. Anthony framed it beside Margaret's note. A gallery of graces. Summer tours beckoned. East Coast readings, New York buzz. Robert tagged along for Boston. Father-son diner stops. Lobster rolls and laughs. Fall harvest. Anthology sequel curated. More voices. Elias guest editing a section. Crisis. Mild. Publisher crunch. Deadlines biting. Anthony's burnout flickered. Javier pulling him to the river. Breathe the bend. Renewed, he wrote on. Years layered. Book tours to Europe. Robert's retirement cabin in the Siskiyous. Visits with grand stories brewing. Karma's plan. From outcast to oracle. Betrayal's bite to bonds bloom. Anthony, at 40's cusp, looked back. Kicked out, but karma kicked harder in love's favor. The East Coast tour carved a whirlwind path through autumn's fire-kissed leaves. Anthony's suitcase a perpetual nomad, stuffed with manuscripts and the faint scent of Javier's cologne clinging to a spare shirt. New York kicked it off with a bang. Reading at the Strand, shelves towering like urban evergreens. Crowd a mix of literary agents and wide-eyed MFA hopefuls. Robert tagged for that leg, his awe palpable as they navigated subway mazes. His Milltown drawl earning grins from baristas slinging $7 lattes. Fancy, he muttered over pastrami at Katz's. But his eyes shone at the after-party, rubbing elbows with authors he'd only read in waiting rooms. You built this, Robert said later, hotel bar dim, glasses clinking. From that rainy sidewalk. Anthony raised his bourbon. We both did. You're showing up, that mattered. Boston followed, Harvard's wood-paneled halls hosting a panel on queer memoir. Anthony flanked by panelists whose scars mirrored his. A black trans writer from Atlanta. A Latinx poet from Miami. Questions probed deep. How does place shape the outcast? Anthony drew on Oregon's mists. It hides you, then reveals. Slow, like dawn through fog. Robert attended, notebook in hand, jotting like a student. Post-panel, over clam chowder, he confessed, that group I joined, talking about mom, you helped. Pride swelled, unspoken. The flight west landed them in Seattle for the tour's close, Elias's city, though he'd bowed out respectfully, citing his own schedule. The venue, a waterfront bookstore, overlooked ferries slicing sound, audience vets and civilians blending. Anthony dedicated the reading to those who served silence. Eyes finding a young Marine in fatigues, nodding fierce. Javier met them at baggage, hug enveloping, Robert clapping his back. Good man you got. Home in Eugene hit like bomb. Bungalow aglow with string lights sage had strung, pot of pozole simmering. Wedding anniversary neared, 2 years marked by valley vines and vows renewed. They escaped to that same vineyard. Hot air balloon ride at dawn, earth shrinking to patchwork below. Higher, Javier urged, arms wrapped tight. Life's lattice strengthened. The sequel, Verses from the Valley, hit shelves spring, climbing indie lists. Lila expanded the annex to a second location, Anthony consulting on events. Sage's vinyl shop collabed for listening parties. Poetry synced to soul. Robert's cabin in the Siskius became ritual. Summer weekends, rod and reel, now with Javier's casts joining. Stories layered. Robert's Navy days fleshed, Javier's valley migrations, Anthony's pages bridging. Karma whispered in subtleties. A documentary pitch landed, PBS eyeing queer Pacific voices, Anthony profiled. Filming day, ranch house exteriors, Portland rains reenacted, interviews with Robert Raw, kicked him out to protect him, learned too late from him. Elias guested remotely, his segment a coda of redemption. But under glow undercurrents. Javier's firm-eyed national bids, travel intensifying. Late nights, Anthony alone, words stalled. Miss the everyday you, he admitted over video call. Javier's hotel backdrop a blur of Chicago skyline. Miss our Benz, Javier echoed. 6 months, then home base. Tension simmered, not fracture but fatigue. Sage noticed, over brunch. Talk it out. Bottles burst. They did, post-return, hike to Spencer Butte, summit views sprawling. I fear the pull, Anthony said, breathless. Like Elias's echo. Javier halted, hands cupping face. I'm anchored. You, us, my north. Clarity cascaded, like the Butte's creeks. Winter brought holidays hybrid. Siskius for Christmas. Robert's tree strung with Margaret's ornaments. Javier's family zooming tamales. New Year's, Eugene fireworks. Sage's playlist thumping. Spring renewal. Anthology 3 curated. Themes of legacy. Submissions swelled, including Robert's. Halting verses on lost loves. Mill regrets. Anthony edited gently. Dad. This sings. Publication party at the ranch unprecedented. Neighbors milled. Mill buddies toasting. Mia flying in with Riley, now engaged. Robert read shaky but sure. In the grain of wood, I carved my wrongs, sanded smooth by time's hand. Tears flowed, hugs bridged old divides. Summer's heat peaked with crisis veiled. Anthony's doc visit, routine check flagging fatigue, thyroid shadow, biopsy pending. Javier's hand in his through scans. Robert driving up unasked. Waiting room vigil with bad coffee. Benign, the verdict, relief crashing like waves. Scares gift, Anthony journaled. Gratitude's ink. Fall tours domestic. California reads, LA's sun a shock after drizzle. Robert joined one, Hollywood sign hike leaving him winded but grinning. Your world's big now. Karma's crescendo. Email from a fan, ex-Marine. Your words got me out. Married my partner last week. OU. Chain unbroken. Years accelerated. Anthony tenured adjunct at UO, Javier VP, travels tamed. Robert's 80th, cabin bash, poetry roast, verses teasing his gruff heart. Elias's book launched, dedication, to echoes that teach. Anthony attended Seattle signing, families in tow, Javier, Robert, handshake warm, full circles. Adoption talks bloomed. Fostering a teen, queer kid from Portland group home. Our bend, Javier said. Paperwork mountains, home studies passed. Kid arrived. 16, named Kai. Eyes wary but warming. First family dinner. Pozole, pie, stories shared. Kai's poetry sparked, joining slams. Anthony mentored, Robert baiting hooks for creek trips. Karma's plan shocked in abundance. From solitary rain to family hearth, kicks to cradles. At 50's edge, Anthony reflected in Memoir 4, Karma didn't plot revenge. It plotted return, the love we give, circling back manifold. The Siskius cabin stood sentinel against the encroaching dusk, its pine log walls weathered by decades of whispers and winds, the air sharp with the tang of wood smoke and wild sage. Anthony paused on the porch, key in hand, the weight of the day's drive from Eugene settling like a familiar shawl. Javier pulled up behind in the Tacoma, Kai unfolding from the passenger seat with the gangly grace of 17, earbuds dangling, backpack slung over one shoulder. Robert emerged from the screen door, apron dusted with flour from pie crust wars, his grin crinkling lines deeper than the canyon below. "City slickers," Robert called, clapping Kai's back. "Catch anything today?" Kai smirked, high school senior now, voice deepening. "More than you, Gramps. That trout laughed at your fly." Laughter rippled, easy as the creek's burble. Inside, the cabin hummed domestic. Javier stoking the hearth, Anthony unpacking coolers of elk jerky and Javier's heirloom salsa, Robert sliding pies onto the sill to cool. Kai claimed the loft, homework spread, but drifted down for stories. Robert's navy yarns spun taller each visit, Javier's valley folktales laced with spice. This ritual, born of healings, anchored them. Anthony's adjunct life at UO Balance tours. Spring reads in San Francisco, fall panels in Chicago, words traveling farther than his feet. The fourth memoir, Circles in the Current, crested bestseller whispers, its pages tracing Kai's arrival. A foster to adopt odyssey of paperwork tempests and midnight doubts. "You're the glue," Javier had said post-signing, rings glinting in lamplight. Their marriage, 8 years etched, felt like river stone. Smoothed, substantial. Kai's integration wove wonders. Poetry club star at school, his verses fierce on identity's forge. Adoptive bends, queer curiosities emerging. Anthony mentored, slams shared. Father-son stages, applause thunderous. Robert baited more than hooks now, patience, pride. Karma's echoes persisted. Elias's tour crossed paths in Denver, shared green room. Families introduced, wives chatting, husbands nodding over coffee. "Life's plot twist," Elias quipped. "From fallout to full." Anthony agreed, grateful for the scar tissue. Back home, Lila's Annex empire grew, third location in Bend, Anthony board seat. Sage's vinyl evolved to label, Kai interning summers, spinning tracks for poetry nights. Crisis crested gentle. Robert's hip, age's toll, surgery swift. Anthony and Javier shuttled, Kai visiting with contraband comics. Recovery cabin bound. Robert grumped then glowed. "You kids, my luck." Fall's colors blazed, wedding anniversary 10th. Vow renewal at the vineyard, intimate, Mia and Riley. Sage officiating in sequins, Robert toasting with Margaret's crystal. Balloons lifted, promises whispered. Through currents, always. Winter solstice, Kai's coming out. Quiet dinner, rainbow cake from Sage. Bye maybe, figuring. Hugs enveloped, Robert's firm. Love's the figure that fits. Spring brought acceptances. Kai to UO creative writing. "Your shadow," he teased Anthony. Tours international. London fogs, Paris cafes, words translated. Robert tagged Edinburgh, kilts and whiskey. Father-son pubs echoing laughs. Summer's heat, Anthology 5. Global queers, Elias co-editing. Launch hybrid, virtual toasts spanning time zones. Karma's final shock? A letter, anonymous at first. DNA kit results. From a half-sibling, Margaret's secret, wartime fling. Brother in Tacoma. Seeking connection. Anthony drove north, Javier beside. Kai curious. Cafe meet. Mid-40s named Drew, engineer with their eyes. Stories synced. Absent dad tales, resilient moms. Karma's family reunion, Drew joked. Drew integrated slow. Cabin barbecues, poetry shares. Robert met, handshake to hug. Bigger table now. At 60, Anthony reflected in sequel. Kicked out launched us all. Ripples widening to harbors. Legacy bloomed. Foundation for queer youth. Scholarships in Margaret's name. Kai's first chapbook. Anthony blurbed. Voice of the Bend. Javier's firm greenlit community gardens. Valley plots for all. Robert's 90th. Siskius blowout. Strings and stews. Verses from kin. Anthony closed. From one door shut, worlds opened. Dusk fell, stars pricking, family clustered. Karma's plan. Shocking in its grace. From exile to embrace. A life not endured, but exalted.